Okay, we'll get started. Thank you very much for joining us. We have this slotted for an hour. I don't know that it'll take that long, but wanted to give a chance to kind of walk through some things with using the CD-ROM that we've provided from the CDC on doing your concussion certification things, and give some time for questions and answers. So if it does take the full hour, that's fine, but if we're done earlier, there's no problem with that either. We do expect about 15 folks on the call tonight, so if you could please mute your phone by pressing *6. That'll help minimize the background noise, or you can use the mute function on your phone. I should also point out that the slides that I'm sharing tonight we will send out to you following the session. They may not go out until tomorrow morning. Depends upon how long the recording goes. And also, we are recording this session, and we'll have a link on MySOMD on the Field Services tab, so folks can go back and reference it as well. So this slide here is just a review of what we've shared before related to concussion certification. This is a new requirement from Special Olympics North America and Special Olympics International. And the bottom line is that effective January 1 of 2016, all coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches, anybody who is coaching in any way, needs to have completed concussion training prior to the start of coaching. And there are several ways that they can do it. There are 2 online sessions, as are noted there. One is by the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control, called Heads Up Concussion in Youth Sports. And in fact, what we're going to review tonight is, in essence, a CD copy of their online course. It takes about 30 minutes, and there's the link there. Then there's also the NFHS, which is the National Federation of High School Sports, has a similar concussion in sports session. In fact, actually, it's built on the CDC session. Much of the content is the same, and then they add some additional things related to high school sports. That's also available at that site. Special Olympics Maryland does not have, and not just Special Olympics Maryland, but none of the individual states or other entities within Special Olympics. No one besides Special Olympics North America or Special Olympics Incorporated or International rather. No one else has the authority to create or approve additional courses or modifications to the courses. These are the ones that are required. Should also point out that this is a part of the overall risk management. While to the best of my knowledge, we really haven't had any significant concussion challenges in Maryland, there's always that possibility. It's something that is that all of our coaches should be familiar with, and that's why this is a component here. And it's just a good, safe practice, and it's not terribly painful, and it's free. It just takes roughly 30 minutes or so if you go online. It takes a little bit longer when we do it live, but we want to be sure we have that option as well. So to meet the requirement, in general, coaches can take either the 2 online courses or this new option we'll talk about tonight. They submit evidence of completion to Special Olympics Maryland. When they do the CDC online course, they actually get or create a PDF of the certificate that they could just forward the certificate to us. There's a similar type of thing for National Federation of High School Sports, plus also Special Olympics Maryland. I think it's either once a month or once every 2 months. We get a listing through Annette Lynch, who many of you know. She oversees coaches training for Special Olympics North America. She sends us a list of folks who have completed the session through NFHS. Such a list is not available through CDC, which if you've taken the course with the CDC, you can see that they really don't capture any contact information or anything like that. The only place that you put a name in is at the very end when you create your certificate. So, but anyhow, they can send it to that email address of coaches@somd.org. That actually currently goes right through to Tommy George, who will be handling managing this. The requirement for concussion certification is good for 3 years, and will So 3 years in January of 2019 or the fall of 2018, we'll be doing another major push, as we will continuing it with any new coaches that come in and such. Both are free, we mentioned, in the CDC course. We recommend that only because it's easier to get to and utilize. To use the NFHS, which is a fine course, and it's a fine organization, but the way they have it set up, you have to sign up and in essence purchase it for $0 through their shopping cart module, which can just be a little bit cumbersome. So our expectation is that, I don't know, 80% of coaches will go through and do it independently online, but we did want to have an additional option for folks who have difficulty getting online or would prefer to do it live, or if you have a captive audience, that you can do it there in that format as well. And so we've obtained the CDC course on CD-ROM and have distributed to each area. Those of you who were represented at the area directors meeting in early August received your CD-ROM in person for your area, and then the rest hopefully you received probably in your mail today. They went out on either went into the mail on Thursday or on Friday of last week. So if you didn't receive it, you should be receiving it. We've sent one out to each area. You are permitted to make copies of those. Just test your copies before they go out. So again, the CDC is offering it for free here. So you can use this to present, in essence, a live session. And when I say a live session, we'll walk through the actual presentation momentarily. Who's ever presenting it for your area is really more of a facilitator than a presenter. All the content is coming from the the presentation that's on the CD-ROM. It actually has audio and has video and such. It's all part of that. So, but you can do this, and again, it may be best or a good approach for some of the folks in your, some of the coaches in your area. On the CD-ROM, and we'll look through the contents of it momentarily, there is also a sign-up sheet that you can use, and you can basically, to indicate that someone has completed the course through this live presentation, you complete the sign-up sheet for that session, scan it, and email it in to coaches@somd.org, and we'll update the records. So, what's on the CD-ROM? Those of you who have it in hand may have already gone and taken a look at it, which is great. We copied onto there the main presentation that is provided by the Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC. Their Heads Up Concussion in Youth Sports. And I should also point out there that this is based on youth sports, and so just as with some of the other online trainings that are out there, coaches, since Special Olympics works with both youth sports as well as adult sports, they will just need to be flexible in terms of adapting the content for adults as well as children. The gist of it is the coach is the person who is in control of making a decision on when the athlete or the participant comes back into play, whether that person is an adult or a child, and so it would come into play here as well. In addition, we've copied, or it's on there as part of the presentation, sort of, is their resource center that has a number of different handouts. But then we also included a folder that we're calling, is labeled Concussion Certification Resources, and within that is a sign-up sheet that you can download for your, or print for your purposes. We've also put in a copy of the parent-athlete information sheet. We recommend that. It's a 2-page, you can copy it front and back, handout that's helpful. There's a copy of the script for the overall presentation. It doesn't have the entire script. It has the script of the narrator. It doesn't have the script of all the different interviews and such. And again, if you haven't already gone through and watched it, recommend that you do, so that you can get a sense of what we're talking about. There's a hard copy of the quiz that concludes it, the presentation, and if they're doing it online, the folks would take it actually online. and then also a PDF of a customizable certificate so that you can create a certificate to give them either in person if you make them ahead of time, or you can email out to them if you wish following that. That's not required. What really matters for us is getting their names that they have attended and they've participated on the by way of the sign-in sheet. So when you load the CD-ROM into your computer, there are one of two ways that you can launch the presentation. One is and these are both Windows-based. I'm sorry, I don't have any graphics for Mac-based presentations, but my understanding is this launches fine within a Mac as well. But when you first load your CD-ROM into your drive, this pop-up box here should come up, and if you click on Run Heads Up Concussion.exe, a little box that pops up in Windows, that'll launch and start the program. If that doesn't open up, or if you've gone onto the CD-ROM to look up some other things, you can also launch it by hitting from your Windows Explorer the Heads Up Concussion.exe. Yeah, let's go just a second here. Okay. So when you launch it, hopefully you can all see this. This is the screen that comes up. We're not going to go through the presentation tonight. It's not a good use of your time. Plus, also it doesn't necessarily translate well going over a webinar format. We will touch on different pieces of it. But let's go back. So that's the main screen that comes up. And for the presentation itself, there are actually 5 different sections or 5 different lessons. And then as is noted here, there is, for most of them, there is some type of activity at the conclusion of the lesson that you would need to do with the group. Our recommendation is that that unless you just have somebody sitting there doing it by themselves on a CD-ROM, in essence, they're using the CD-ROM as if they were on the website. If you're doing it as any kind of a presentation, do these concluding activities as discussions for the group. Makes it a little more interactive, more interesting, and may as well do that and engaging for folks that are when you've got several people in the room together. To go through, it automatically starts at the concussion basics, which is the first lesson. To launch, you just hit, and I should also say, it takes a moment or two once you start to launch it to have the presentation come up and be ready to present it. So have that as you're preparing when you're doing the presentation, that have it set up and ready to go before your folks are there or before you're scheduled to start. But just click the play button, and I don't know that you'll be able to hear it on here on my computer's presentation, but there's some background music, and it reads through. On the chance that you have some folks who are hearing impaired, there is also, by clicking this little box here, there's a little closed captioning that comes up that folks can see. If for some reason you need to pause the presentation, you can hit pause right here. If for some reason you shut it down, it doesn't save your place other than if you hit the pause button. So it unfortunately goes back to the very beginning. And as we'll see in a moment, the way that it's designed, and I have no control over this, the way that it's designed, you can't jump to another section. You actually have to complete the section before you can go to the next section. So go ahead and hit play again. I'm not recommending this, but if you do need to jump ahead for some reason, you can drag the little yellow bar, which hopefully you can see, to the far right. Okay. There is, as I noted on the previous slide that was up here, there are some different sessions or different activities at the end. Unfortunately, there is no way around them. You can't skip past them. So here, But if you're doing it as a presentation, I point that out only if you're trying to skip through for some reason or to look up some information. Obviously, if you're doing the presentation, you would go through this and facilitate it. So the first question is offered there. You click the option, true or false, and then hit submit. It will tell you whether it was correct or not. Then next, there's same, one more, and if I remember correctly, without reading it all, there we go. So 3 questions, and then it will automatically advance. Takes a moment for it to run, but it'll advance to the next component. So just go ahead to lesson 2, plays through. They did a really nice job with this. I got to give them a lot of credit for it. With some nice videos, some scenarios, and so on down the line that are there. For session 2, at the end, there are, I think it's session 2, there are 5 scenarios, if I remember correctly. Oh, no, okay, that's at the end of session 3. So at the end of session 2, or lesson 2, as is noted, there's 2 links that are there. So you have to open up both of these before it will let you go forward. So you can see next is currently gray. So open that up for the presentation, and folks can read through that. You can talk through those. This is basically reminders of content that was covered during the session itself. So one is symptoms reported by athletes, and the others are signs that are noticed by coaches. And you notice after I've opened up both of them, the next becomes available. So I can go ahead and click next. It takes a moment for it to launch. Lesson 3. We're not going to go through everything. I did want to point out one thing here at the end of lesson 3. As it goes through, so again, you can play through that. If you were asked by your area director to join us tonight, but you don't have the CD-ROM, as I indicated on the slide, or one of the earlier slides, which again you'll get, there's a link to their online edition of this, which most folks will be taking. It is identical. Some of the formatting of the screen may be slightly different, but the content is identical, so you can go through. I strongly recommend you go through it once or twice, just to be sure that you're fully familiar. But as I noticed, at the end of each session, there's some additional activities. Well, we're still in session 2. Sorry, there's apparently some questions here. Let's see. Let me just pick one. Okay. So that's what happens. I just randomly picked an answer there. So it gives you the answer. You're not forced to go through that. It gives you the correct answer there. And I'm just going to randomly pick 5. 4, 5, and oh, okay. So all of them are there. And again, when you're presenting, do this as a conversation, but you will need to click through the actual answers that are on there. And again, I recognize that there could be better ways to present this, but we don't have the authority to change the content. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a risk management aspect as well, and so some of this has to do with Special Olympics insurance policies and the requirements associated with them. So now we're on to lesson 3, and we'll skip through here to the end. So here again are 5 scenarios that you would need to play. That said, well, this seems like an awful lot. The actual lessons are not very long. To do this on your own, not as a presentation, to do this independently, takes between 20 and 25 minutes. We say 30, but reality is 20 to 25 minutes. So when you put in some the process of doing it in front of a group in any conversation, I would plan on it being about 45 minutes. But to launch a scenario, you just click on it, and it goes through, and you have to go through all 5. And similarly, there's some other items or questions that are there. Actually, I have to let this launch before I can go elsewhere. So I'm not gonna go through the remaining ones. You can do those on your own. It's very straightforward. Just so when you get to the end of the session, know that there are some additional steps that you need to do to go to the next scenario. In the Resource Center, and this is only available within the presentation, there are some additional downloadable tools, some that you can order, some you can download directly. This is that parent sheet. We thought it would be easier to give it to you ahead of time. So several different options that are here, and then you can go back to training. And actually, if you go that route, it does hold where, like here we are at session 3 or lesson 3 for that. So again, I'm not going to go through the rest of it. It's not worth the additional effort or time for folks. You're going to do it on your own. So this is your presentation. Again, the notes that are there. So the process for you as a presenter, if you're getting ready to present this, first, of course, arrange a day, time, and location that you're going to have it. And decide when you're figuring out the location, a couple points that are noted later there is or actually the third bullet there is what technology are you going to use for the presentation. If it has to be something that's going to be visible for all attendees and audible for all attendees, generally speaking, we don't recommend using just a laptop unless you're only talking 1 or 2 people that are doing it at a time. Just the ability to sit around and all see the laptop and not have people wandering and drifting away. It just is wise to use some type of a projector or a large screen TV for anything more than 2 people or so. So factor that in terms of the location of does it have the facility to present and such. So, but arrange the day, time, and location. Announce it and publicize it if appropriate. Depending upon where you do it, if you're doing it, say, right after your basketball practice, you're going to grab, which is a feasible approach, just grab all your coaches after your first basketball practice who need to do it and ask them to stick around for an extra half hour, 45 minutes, and get this all taken care of, or at least those who didn't do it online. That's an option. I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's one scenario that I could easily see because you've already got the folks that you need sort of as a captive audience. Or you could do it as a special session or and such. Steve Whiting, I don't know if Steve's on the call right now. He's doing
I'm here, Mike.
Yeah, I'd asked Steve to take a look. Steve's done the presentation for coaching Special Olympics athletes a few times, and he's looking to see if it's realistic to try to include some of this. Or include this as a portion of that. My gut is that's probably going to be too long of a time frame, but we wanted to at least explore if that was a possibility. And Steve, you're doing that or looking at that as a part of the session in September, is that right?
Yeah, September 1st we're doing our coaching Special Olympics thing in Frederick, and so I'm going to do this at the end. So I think I can make it work. It looks like I can make it work.
Okay, so if we can take Steve's learning, and Steve's a very experienced presenter, not just coaching Special Olympics athletes, but in general. And so if it looks like that and it's something that we can add in, we can have it as sort of at the tail end of coaching Special Olympics athletes for those folks who haven't had it. So that could be another option in terms of how folks can get it. But anyhow, wherever you're presenting it, keep in mind the items that we've got there in terms of what tech do you need and such. Ahead of time, print the items that I've noted here, or at least recommend here. One is the sign-in sheet, which it's not rocket science. It is here. This is the sign-in sheet that we have, and you can then fill out the course date, the location, the host program, and the course moderator. There's space for however many folks that you need to have sign up for it. And there's the parent-athlete information sheet. I recommend you printing those as a handout. That's not required. Folks, if they're doing it online, don't get that automatically as a handout. Similarly, I recommend having the quiz, and that's the file. Those are the file names that are there. And these are all in that concussion certification resources folder I mentioned on the CD-ROM. The quiz it's 2 sides of 1 page. It's a nice handout. You could pre-print the certificates. The quiz, actually, while we're here, this here is the parent-athlete concussion information sheet. It's nice and pretty colors. You don't have to do it in color if you don't have access to do that inexpensively. This is the actual script. Would recommend for you to have that available just as a reference tool. Even though it doesn't cover every word that's in the script or that's in the session, it's a helpful tool for you to have. The quiz, the final quiz, that's here. And again, you actually, since this is at the end of the presentation, you can use this strictly as a conversation kind of summary for folks. Do not have people complete the quiz and turn them into you. We don't want the completed quizzes. There's no need to do that. They can do it as, again, as part of a discussion. And even though it's online or on the presentation where you can click the answers, you don't need to do that if that's going to slow you down. And then also available here, this is the certificate, and you can go in, and this is editable for folks here. If they do it online through the CDC site, they get a slightly different certificate, but here this is designed for a live presentation so that you can put the person's name, the date, and then you can sign it as the facilitator for that. Let's see. What else? So yeah, those are some things you should print ahead of time. Just trying to give you a little checklist. Complete the top of the sign-in sheet, then have all the sign-in sheet. Have everybody sign in, and if you're going to give it out as a handout, give the parent-athlete info sheet at the beginning so that they have it. Welcome everybody. Go through the CD-ROM. Again, the intent here is not for you to take the content and create your own presentation. We need to use the CD-ROM. That's what we're authorized to do. And again, it's outside of my control to make any kind of change with that at this point in time. So go through, use the different question portions as conversations and such. And then at the conclusion, I distribute the heads-up quiz at that time if you're giving it out as a handout. And then you can talk through that as a summary for the session. Thank everybody. Then at the end, scan the sheet and email the scanned file to coaches@somd.org. And our best estimate, if you go through this process, and perhaps as when Steve tries to integrate it with the coaching Special Olympics athletes, we can tighten it up a little bit more. But that looks at about 45 minutes from when the time you start the CD-ROM to the end of the session. We're estimating an extra 15 minutes only because having a conversation takes more time than someone just clicking through and selecting their own responses. But tweak it as you need to. The big thing is that they've gone through and have observed, listened to, seen all the content on the CD-ROM that meets the requirements from a risk management standpoint. Some suggestions. Again, I mentioned before, if you have more than 2 people, use a projector or some type of larger screen display than a laptop. Go through the session a couple times on your own so that you're familiar with it. Even though you're not presenting, having a sense of what's coming up and where the next thing is valuable. Test your tech in advance. That includes through whatever device. Typically it's going to be a laptop, I would assume, that you're using to play the CD-ROM. Test it with that laptop. Test whatever the projector stuff is ahead of time so that you're not suddenly, and that's actually a wise move, whether this session or any session that has tech in it, is always test that stuff ahead of time. Similarly, the next one is just a standard thing for any presentation, is know the location and know any possible distractions and what you can do to control it, whether it just means closing the door or orienting differently where the front of the room, as it were, is, or where the presentation is going to be made. Just by turning that 180 degrees, you can solve some distraction problems again, for any presentation, not just this one. Rehearse it on your own in terms of, even though you're not presenting the content, rehearsing through, practicing through the facilitation or the question portions can be helpful. And then remember, if you exit out of that portion, it's going to go back to the beginning. But you saw how I skipped ahead a little bit. It's a little cumbersome. Unfortunately, there's no way around it, but that's there. Showed you the closed captioning option. And then, again, just a reminder that you're really there as a facilitator. You don't have to be an expert on concussions. What your expertise is, if you want to be effective in this, is managing a group of folks in a conversation along those lines. So just some other stuff that's coming up with the certification. We had put some other stuff out time frame wise, but this is where we're going forward. Is after Labor Day, we will email to all coaches. It'll be the week after Labor Day. Those active in 2014 and 2015, announcing this new requirement. It's been alluded to or indicated as coming in many of the coach preseason webinars, so this shouldn't be totally new for folks. We want to get it out there before it actually hits in terms of everyone has to adhere to it on effective January 1. We'll also then send reminders out to coaches who haven't completed the process each month in October, November, December. We'll then thereafter do it at the beginning of each season and do reminders as is necessary. In terms of tracking, there is a Coach Concussion Training certification that's in GMS. It pops up if the person has it. For those of you who have used GMS, I don't know that all of you have, or I assume not all of you had, but within the computer system, GMS is our games management system, our computer system that we use for all of our registrations. When you hover over a name, a little piece of information pops up that shows some of their basic information, their address and such, but also what the certifications are. This shows up on that as well. It doesn't highlight it if they haven't completed it, like it does for a volunteer application, or if it's expired, like it does for volunteer applications anytime you hover over a volunteer. But just because this is really only required for coaches. But it does come up if it's there. There's a report template that's there. I'll show you what it spits out momentarily so that area managers can go in and run it as desired. And we talked through the general process for running certification reports in a webinar a few months ago, and it's that same basic process. We'll push out to area leaders a listing coinciding with when we send the stuff out to coaches so that you know who has completed it and who hasn't. It's real easy right now. There's a total of, I think, about 20 folks who've completed it, and you'll see them in just a minute. And then following each training registration deadline, we'll send the reports as well out with that as part of that whole package. We're looking at potentially incorporating it into the report that area directors received for golf and kayaking just the other day that had protective behaviors in there that we added in amongst the volunteer application and medical application and such. We can look at adding that in there if we think that would be useful as well. It just makes for a slightly longer report, but if it's helpful to do it that way, we certainly can. And then there's some other things there that in terms of how folks will get notification on their own if they've completed the course, they've got that information. This is the report, and this actually lists everybody who, as of 4:21 this afternoon, we have in GMS as having completed it. This is actually a report that is, when you run it, normally breaks out by group on a separate page. So it actually starts Baltimore County, then Carroll County and such. So that's why it looks like it's kind of a weird alpha order. But these are the folks that currently have this, and this is their expiration date. It also indicates how they met the certification requirement. So Bill Ferguson, as an example, and a couple other folks, Donna McGuire, Stu Wolf and such, actually took the NFHS course, which is fine. Others have taken the CDC online, and we'll have another option there of CDC live presentation as an additional option that's there. And that's something, for security reasons, we'll handle, based on what you submit to us on those sign-in sheets, we'll take care of getting their records updated. Luckily, this is a pretty quick thing to do. It takes less than 30 seconds per record to update them. Actually, probably closer to 15 unless the system's going real slow. So keeping up to date, unless we suddenly get a massive number in, we should be able to keep stuff up to date within a day or two of receiving it. So that's it. That's what we wanted to cover. That said, if you wish to, some of you may have already done so, and it's fine. If you want now, you can go out and do these presentations as you see fit. So you're good to go. That said, if there's any questions on anything that I've covered, again, I'm not going to go into the content of the presentation. It's not really the purpose for this. But any questions on the process or what you have, or anything along those lines? And to remind you to unmute your phone if you do have a question. No? Great. Okay, well, thank you. I hope this was helpful. Didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but did want to have the opportunity to present and kind of walk through the basic process. I appreciate you joining us tonight, and likely tomorrow morning we'll send the slide deck out along with the link for the recording. That'll go out to everybody, all the area directors and area support, and you'll get this as well. Anybody who's on here who isn't in one of those two mailing lists, and folks can share it then as they need to. Again, the link for the recording will be placed on MySOMD. So that said, thank you much. Have a great rest of the evening, and we'll see you at an upcoming event.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.